I'm so sick of hearing about Solana. It's such a garbage coin, and it's obviously always been XRP. And I'm even a little bit sick of hearing about Bitcoin. And I know we need Bitcoin and the amount of money in Bitcoin to move the entire market up for now, but Bitcoin is not going to be the leader forever. Bitcoin is slower, heavier than XRP. Ethereum is still yet slower and heavier than XRP. And XRP is the only one that's got like regulation clarity from having won the lawsuit or settled the lawsuit with the SEC. It's always been XRP and always will be XRP. And Solana has recently had, and I think has continuously had, issues on their ledger and has had glitches and has had failures, and they're running out of people even interested in that project to keep it alive. That's why they're talking about moving over to the XRP ledger or joining the XRP ledger. I don't know what Solana's goal was when they started, but I'm sick of hearing about them. Like, I just heard a video from a really sharp crypto person on YouTube. They were talking about how, oh, Bitcoin's gonna go to 1 million, Ethereum's gonna go to 15,000, and Solana's gonna go to 1,000. I doubt it. Solana is, even from the first time I heard about XRP and started looking into crypto, I saw Solana and I was like, that looks like a lame duck. I don't know why, I just had a feeling. Bitcoin was the first. Bitcoin was a prototype. That's why Bitcoin has all the hype. That's why Bitcoin has all the money, has all the market cap. But I'm so sick of hearing people talk about XRP as an altcoin. It fits into the category of an altcoin right now, technically only based on its market cap. Everything around XRP is so exclusively not an altcoin. It is the coin. It is the only coin that has a corporation building around it, building infrastructure through it into the global financial system. It's the only coin doing that. Bitcoin doesn't have that. In fact, Bitcoin, if they ever find out who Satoshi is, or if Satoshi is a group of people, or that Satoshi was started by a government agency, if they ever find out who Satoshi is, or if Satoshi is just a genuine person that started Bitcoin and then disappeared and did it anonymously, if Satoshi ever decides to sell his, I don't know, it's like 1,000 Bitcoin or something like that, there goes a good amount of the value in your Bitcoin. And if he ends up being somebody or a group of people that is really, really looked at negatively, certain groups of people that might own islands, if there's a connection made there, or that connection gets released, or that connection becomes stronger, that coin's diving. I mean, I don't think it goes to zero. There's always going to be some people that believe in Bitcoin, but it's definitely diving. When you look at the grand scheme of things, when I've made a transfer through XRP, it's almost instant. It's like 10 to 15 seconds, and it's like 0.0001 XRP. That's the cost of the transfer. Now, when I have to run over an Ethereum network, because Ethereum's pretty strong right now, when I have to select to run something through an Ethereum network, that happened to me one time from one exchange to another, I had to run it over the Ethereum network. That cost me like 17 cents, which was way higher than 0.00001 XRP. And so, I mean, it's not an expensive transfer, don't get me wrong. Like, Ethereum's not expensive, but compared to XRP, yeah, everything's expensive. Everything is expensive compared to XRP. Now, Ripple has already had meetings at the White House. They've already had meetings with the Federal Reserve. They've already had meetings behind the scenes. They have rumored to be 1,700 NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, with corporations and institutions and people all over the world. I mean, I watched a video where Elon Musk was asked about XRP, and he was a little weird about it. I mean, he's weird in general, but he was a little weird about how he reacted when he heard XRP being asked about when he was on stage. Because there's an instant trigger in his mind that he can't talk about it. So what he did say about it was, yeah, I think it could do well, it could be involved. That's what he said. I mean, the smartest guy on the planet, the guy who started PayPal, the guy who his partner Peter Thiel started PayPal with him. They sold PayPal, and they've always been interested in making payments better, easier, faster. They've always been interested in it. Why would he have such a minimal reaction to hearing and talking about XRP, unless he had a non-disclosure agreement. You're talking about the guy who will say anything he thinks on X, anything he thinks on Twitter. No holds bar. He doesn't care if he loses money. Why would he not talk about XRP or even say anything bigger than just the most basic statement you can make, a blanket statement you can make about any asset on the planet? Unless you had a non-disclosure agreement with some people in very high power positions, and there's a reason they're all being told to withhold talking about it. When you hear Kevin O'Leary talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum and crypto, those keywords, sometimes I've caught him pausing. He says, yeah, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, and then he stops because he's thinking in his head, his brain went to XRP, but he can't say it. They're not allowed to say it yet. They're not allowed to talk about it yet. They're not allowed to talk about it because they want all you, just like I've seen in the comments, all of you typing in the comments, believe XRP is never going to go anywhere. XRP is never going to go to $100. XRP is never going to go to $25. XRP is going to be like $5 at the end of this year. Really? Ripple has been working their ass off for 12 years to run infrastructure and buy billion-dollar companies, cash, to expand their ability to run the XRP ledger throughout the world. And they're gonna struggle to double the price of XRP. They're gonna struggle. They've met with the Federal Reserve. They've met with the White House twice. They invested $200 million into Donald Trump's ballroom. They were the biggest donor to Donald Trump's ballroom, and they're gonna struggle to double. So Ethereum can triple, Bitcoin can go to $1 million, but XRP is going to struggle to double. Think about it. Think about it real quick. Just based on the fact that XRP sits right now at around $130 billion market cap. Ethereum sits at like $300 something billion market cap. Bitcoin sits at 2 trillion or something like that. I forget the exact stat. It's huge. If they ever find out who Satoshi is, Bitcoin's gonna dive. If Satoshi ends up selling his Bitcoin because he doesn't want to deal with it anymore, then Bitcoin dives. If MicroStrategies ever fails and Bitcoin drops below the price of like $74,000, it's gonna dive. XRP doesn't have any of those distinct, huge, like unknown flaws. XRP also isn't failing to transact like Solana. XRP doesn't also cost as much as Ethereum. I think I did one time a calculation of the total amount of Ethereum available versus its market cap valuation. And then I did the math on it. And then I did XRP, the total amount of supply available versus its market cap. And I think Ethereum came out to something like, if there was as many coins as XRP in Ethereum would be like $3.70. I think the reason Ethereum is looked at higher than XRP is, for one, they suppressed the hell out of XRP. They've completely taken XRP and just shoved it down. Anytime people talk about it, they shoved it down. Ripple just got approved in the UK for banking. Now, that's, I've heard, one of the hardest places to get banking rights to. They just got approved in the UK. Japan has already openly talked about running on the XRP ledger. The United States they've talked about a digital currency reserve, and they always say the word Bitcoin, and they keep buying Bitcoin. Well, I think they keep buying Bitcoin because they already have a deal with Ripple to, on the back end, to when everything switches over to the XRP ledger, when everything switches over to Ripple, because it's the obvious choice. If you've done any research, you are not going to run global trade on Bitcoin. It's way too heavy and slow, and you're not going to do it. It's not stable enough either. You need a stable amount to be running global transfers so that you don't get backed up and backlogged for days and hours for your transaction to clear. That's what Swift was. Swift was just ancient, archaic technology from, I think, like 84 years ago. That's had slight updates over time. I mean, we literally have Elon Musk sending massive multi-ton starships out to space and then landing back on a landing pad and catching it like that. And it takes your credit card payment 3 to 5 days to clear. That's bullshit. It's horseshit. They know it's bullshit. So for years they've been planning to rewire, and who has been planning to it? the global elites, they've been planning to rewire the banking system. Now, which coin, if you were to just look at it with no bias, if you were to just look at these coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and you were to actually use them and transfer over the networks, which one do you think you would choose? The one designed for it. The banker's coin. It's always been joked at as the banker's coin, but it's literally going to become the banker's coin. And you can catch the bandwagon or not, but if you miss the bandwagon when it's $2, you're sure as hell gonna miss it when it's $100. You're sure as hell gonna miss it when it's $1,000. I get so sick of hearing and reading all these comments of people that are just completely negative and downtrodden about XRP and what it's gonna do. Are you serious? XRP will be lucky if it hits $6 by the end of the year. So they're gonna tokenize the entire world so that you can own 0.001% of the Sears Tower. You can own 0.001% of a Monet painting. You can own 0.001% of the maybe like the stadiums for where the football players play. You can literally, they're going to tokenize national parks. They're going to tokenize part of the Amazon rainforest. You're going to be able to own a percentage of the Amazon rainforest through tokenization. Now, what's the fastest and best and most stable token to use? XRP. So when you have the whole world tokenized, when that couch is tokenized, when this house is tokenized, and when everything's tokenized and you can buy into a percentage and people can put it on the open market and they can be like, I want a percentage of that, and it's all going to settle, not on Swift, it's not going to settle through JP Morgan. It's not going to settle. It's going to settle through XRP because it's the fastest and the cheapest. They've already talked about it. They've already planned it. And they're the only coin that has the fastest and cheapest technology that doesn't fail or glitch. So screw Solana. If Solana does well, great. I don't really care. The point of this video is just I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of hearing about Solana could go to 1,000, but they're literally having glitches in their system. Their transactions are failing. The amount of people behind it, running it to give it security, I forget what it's called, but the amount of people, it's dwindling down to its minimum amount of people interested in participating in Solana. And it's literally struggling, but it can go to $1,000 and then just forget XRP. Just skip it. The person I was watching a video of, they were talking about Bitcoin, then they talked about Ethereum, then they talked about Solana, and they're like, oh, and then there might be some meme coins. So you just literally skip XRP and talk straight about meme coins. Meme coins are all going to die once ISO 2022 becomes just absolutely mainstream. They've integrated it already. They require it now for global banking systems. That's the messaging system it's gonna be on. So 90% of coins are just gonna dissipate after that. They're gonna be lost interest because they're not gonna be able to connect with the actual banking system once they make the switch. They haven't made the switch yet. So all of this stuff they're building on the infrastructure, all of this stuff that they're building up into, that Ripple is building up and around XRP to integrate into the financial system, the entire world. The UK is not a small region. It is not a small town. It is a global titan. The United States of America, who they haven't talked about XRP either, the United States of America is a superpower. Japan is a very strong country. They used to be financially. They're kind of struggling right now. But because they're struggling, once this reverse carry trade happens, they're probably going to just use that as an excuse to flip the switch over to the XRP rails from their old system, and other countries will start coming online. Other banks are coming. It's already there. They don't have to go out and get XRP. It's already there, integrated in the system. When Basel III came out, look into it. Basel III came out and said that banks will have to hold 7% of their top tier assets. Well, if they label XRP as a top tier asset when its price spikes, and because it's already got SEC clarity, and then when the Clarity Act comes out on top of that, doubles down the clarity on XRP. If it gets labeled as a tier 1 asset through I think the CFTCC, whatever it is, if they get labeled as a tier 1 asset like gold and they back it by gold or silver because it's going to be the future currency, when they back it by that, then everyone is going to integrate it, and all the banks will be required to hold XRP. They'll be required to hold 7% of whatever they're using. So if they're using, if they use XRP for billions of dollars a year in transactions, they're gonna have to hold 7% of that amount in XRP in their treasuries. Every bank. And that's so when people talk about, oh, like the ETFs just got launched and that's like, $1.6 billion that they've, had, which is great. It's record setting. It's great. It's great inflows. They're like, well, it's going to take like another, 2 years for them to eat through all the supply before that actually really, really like affects the price and we might see supply shock then. Are you serious? So you're gonna have Japan switch over to XRP's rails. You're gonna have the UK switch over to XRP's and all the EU. You're gonna have the United States switch over to XRP rails because it's the obvious choice. These people in these high positions, they're not stupid. And they are the ones who designed this thing. So they're not stupid. They're gonna use the coin they designed to do it. Now, when all of that happens, XRP is going to race to the top and people are gonna abandon ship out of all these other coins and all these other assets, and there's going to be a FOMO, yes, but BlackRock hasn't even kicked in yet. BlackRock hasn't even announced what their plan is with XRP. Obviously, they have a plan with XRP. If they have integrated Ripple into the UK and Japan and South Korea and United States, if they have integrated through all these regions, I'm just assuming the United States because Trump's not stupid. Whatever you think of him, he's not stupid. He's a lot of things, but you can't really push that argument too hard. You could try, but regardless, XRP is going to be the future. So based on that knowledge, based on all this, based on hearing about XRP versus Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, when everything switches over and all that FOMO kicks in, and the beginning of it will be BlackRock coming out and saying, oh, we already own billions in XRP and we're gonna start selling it through our ETFs. They've already seeded themselves, probably have a pretty healthy position because BlackRock doesn't miss things. BlackRock doesn't get left out. BlackRock doesn't get left in the dust. Why? Because they're the ones pulling the strings. They're the ones that have the ins and the outs. So when you see the market price for XRP do this and get manipulated and all this other stuff, and then you see this giant, I've seen like a dozen, I first started looking into crypto, well not even crypto, XRP like 75 days ago. And since then I've seen XRP do one of these moves where it just starts to slide like a red waterfall. You see that move, it's controlled and manipulated as hell. They're trying to keep you out. They're trying to keep you in the psychology of believing that their prized pony is nothing to see here. Yeah, Bitcoin over here and Ethereum over here. Oh yeah, look at Bitcoin, Ethereum. Oh my God, Bitcoin's almost $100,000 again. It's gonna go $1 million. Ethereum, oh my God, it's over here. Look at that. Oh, it's gonna go $10,000, $15,000. It's so strong and fast and cheap. It's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. And then Solana, look at with $1,000. Yeah, because people are abandoning ship on the project, and it just had another glitch where payments didn't even work. Oh yeah, no, Solana's gonna go to $1,000, but XRP, no, you don't want to see that. Oh no. No, oh look, it just did another little dive again, 10%. Like, oh yeah, it's $2, worthless. $2, but worthless. But they had to hide it in plain sight, their plan to rewire the financial global system, because in order for it to work, for their plan to work, for it to become what it's going to become, it had to be on a public ledger. It had to be decentralized. It had to be available to everyone. And so knowing that, what was their next best plan? Let's keep it cheap as hell forever. We'll occasionally spike it up, do some tests, spike it up, do some tests, and we'll stay in this convergence zone of around $2 to $3. And that way we can test XRP and how it runs through other countries before we actually use it. And when they actually use it, what's the price gonna be? $6? $6? The globe is going to run on its rails. They're going to institute tokenization. So you can tokenize your couch, you can tokenize your house, you can tokenize your car, you can tokenize the Sears Tower, you can tokenize rare paintings, you can tokenize silver, you can trade silver through the XRP ledger and it'll be backed by silver. That's what tokenization will be. And they're gonna run trillions of dollars across the XRP ledger. They're gonna run all of the EU stable coins. So anytime that a business from another country takes their stable coin that they've created, the digital yen or RLUSD or the EU's digital euro, when they start to send that to other countries from businesses, are they gonna use Bitcoin's rails? Are they gonna use Ethereum's rails? Sometimes maybe. But do you think institutions are dumb enough? They have teams of people to run numbers. Teams Teams of not just people at a table, teams of the smartest people from Harvard and Yale around the world to tell them what their numbers are doing and what might make their numbers better. That's their only effing job all day, all year, and they stress themselves out about it all day, all year, and work 80 hours a week to tell those companies of powerful people what the best financial move for them is and what the cheapest way to move money is. And do you think they're gonna land on Solana? Do you think they're gonna land on Bitcoin? No, they're not stupid. XRP has had over 60 billion, I forget what the number was. It's billions of transactions done, not one error. Now, businesses, when they send $48 million for a transaction to close in Singapore, they can't have their transaction have a chance of failing. They can't have the transaction take 3-4 days because Ethereum and Solana are backed up. They're going to figure it out. They already know, likely. They just don't want you to know. They don't want you to be aware. Why would they not want you to be aware? Why? Can you think of one good reason? Think about it. Treat this like a children's TV show. Why? Can you think of one good reason they wouldn't want you to know about it right now? Because it's cheap. Because it's $2 a coin. Because you can afford it right now. They're exposed. They are open. They're sitting there and anyone can pile onto them right now before it launches. Anyone. The brokest person, the person that's homeless, lost their house, they're in debt, they could hop on board XRP right now. You can hop on board XRP right now. You could hop on and buy 10 XRP and you probably wouldn't even flinch. Now, you wouldn't hold it past $1,000 because you wouldn't believe it's going past that. You wouldn't hold it probably even past $100. Like, oh, I have $2,000 now. I just invested. You're all gonna sell. And you're all gonna sell before it does its actual intended purpose, which is to rewire the financial global system. Global. This is going to be the only thing financially to ever happen like this in your entire life. And it's cheap right now, hidden in plain sight, and it's been there for years. I only found out about it 75 days ago. I'm on to them. I see their plan. That's the whole reason I locked in. The whole reason I figured it out. When I figured it out, I started to see the dots, I started to connect the dots. I was like, oh, okay, I can see what they're doing here. I can see why it's $2. I can see why they haven't let it go higher yet. Because in order for it to work for what they want to do, they need it to be at a higher price. Because when you go to a bank, you are not going to trade. When banks trade money, they are not going to send each other dollar bills. They're not going to send each other quarters. They send each other $100 bills or banker's notes of $1,000 bills. They're trading, and that's how they used to do it. Now everything's just digital, so you just type in beep boop and there's a number. But it's backed by nothing. The Federal Reserve, when it prints more money, is backed by nothing. It's backed by us, our debt, the US. It's backed by war. It's backed by nothing you'd want. So when they, and the BRICS, when BRICS, which is the British, Russian, some sort of system with there's people, there's institutions and countries that I forget the acronym. It stands for different countries that are China, I think is involved in it. India, big countries are now backing their currencies by gold and silver, and they are running a system so that you can go to different vaults and everything, your currency, that currency will be backed by gold and silver. Well, everything's digital now. Everything's been digital for years, and so everything is going to run tokenized over the XRP ledger. Cash will probably disappear in the next year or two, even though I wish it wouldn't, but it's all part of their plan. Global financial system with one global reserve currency, which will likely be XRP, and everything will run on that, and it will be backed by precious metals, because it's always been a thing. And once it's backed by precious metals, and once they allow it to fully release, and all the countries switch on over to the rails, you'll have missed out. And everyone on the comments on YouTube that were negative, saying like, it's never gonna go above $6, it's never gonna go above $100, it's never gonna go above, you know, oh, it's just a joke that XRP could ever hit $100. Ethereum's at $3,200. Bitcoin is at $90,000. And Bitcoin, without any company building infrastructure around it, without anyone knowing who even designed the stupid thing, is at $90,000. You don't believe XRP can go to even $100. Just think on that.